about, it's going to be a little bit anatomy heavy, but I'm going to make it pretty accessible. I just
No
think it's
problem.
super important that we understand the anatomy. So I'm just going to pop you on mute, but just shout at me if you need anything at all. So, I mean, our spine, this is what we're looking at this week. Um, it is a wondrous, wondrous thing. It houses the spinal cord. So all of the nervous system comes out of the brain and it travels through a column in the center of the spine. And all of these bones are protecting that. And if I grab, I'm just going to kind of use this. Sorry if I make you a bit seasick. So you can see all the yellow bits that are coming out. These are your nerves, okay, the different nerves coming out of the spine. So you have the posterior side of the spine, which has all of these like really bony things poking out of them. And these are kind of the joints. And then you have the anterior side, which is the body of the vertebrae. And it's generally quite flat. Okay, so it's kind of just really, really flat all the way along. So spine houses that spinal cord, and the nerves come out of the back. So they come out of the posterior side. This is, you know, all your organs and everything. And then it distributes the weight. So if you think about architecture, your spine is distributing the weight of the entire body, and it's distributing the weight of the legs. It supports the head. It also is the place where the muscles and the ligaments kind of attach to. So on this side of the spine where you see the blue and the red, this is the different points where the ligaments and the muscles attach. So you've got loads of that happening all the way along the spine. If you didn't have your spine, those muscles wouldn't have anything to connect to. Then obviously it facilitates movement. Now, your spine is made up of two different curves, okay? Now, one of these curves is a primary curve. So you can't really see my face, but that's okay. So primary curves are the curves that we're born with, okay? So we're actually born with kyphosis curves. So in your thoracic and in your sacral, these are the primary curves. So when we're babies, we're kind of all kind of curled over. And we don't have this curve or this curve. So if you can see the spine, it has a curve that kind of goes, you can feel it on your own body. So your neck curves kind of inwards, and then thoracic curves outwards. So this is a primary curve. This is a secondary curve. Lumbar, again, curves in. This is a secondary curve. And then sacral spine, okay, where the pelvis is, this is your primary curve. We don't develop our secondary curves until we are born and until we really start to walk. I don't think our secondary curves are completely developed till about age 5 or 7. These start to develop as we start to stand and as that weight is distributed. If our spine was totally straight, it would be crap at distributing weight, and it would be really, really bad at kind of responding to any kind of movement. So I've talked about this before, how they make skyscrapers now with this ability to kind of sway in the wind. And this is the same principle, and that helps with earthquakes, high winds, etc. Your spine is built this way to distribute the weight. Another way that the spine distributes the weight is through these cushions. And these cushions are between each and every vertebrae. I think there's 23 of them. And as we move down into lumbar spine, they get really thick. And this is because lumbar is where most of that weight kind of hangs out. Lumbar is also where most people experience pain. These discs are kind of like really fibrous on the outside, cartilage. And then on the inside is like a kind of like a gel, but it's mostly made of water. When we're young, it's really watery. It's super slippy. It's got lots of moisture to it. As we age, it starts to dry out and it isn't as cushiony. And this is why our spines start to give us problems. The other amazing thing about this cushion is they have a fluid, like I've just talked about, and this releases what's called synovial fluid. And if you've heard of WD-40, that oil that helps joints kind of stay not squeaky and move well, when we move our spine, this synovial fluid gets kind of pushed around. And when this synovial fluid is pushed around, it helps to lubricate the joints and keep everything smooth, okay? Now, if we don't do yoga, if we don't do Pilates, if we don't move our body, so if I'm always hunched over like this, okay, this part of my vertebrae, the back of my vertebrae, is opening. So that synovial fluid is being pushed this way. But if I'm always hunched over, the front vertebrae are kind of being pinched towards each other, and that fluid can't really get out. This sometimes causes what's called slip discs. So slip disc is some of that fluid kind of pushing through that cartilage. And it also means that when I want to open up, come into a back bend, that part of my spine that's used to being closed, it's not very open, and it's going to say, nope, I don't want to do that. We want to be moving our spine in all kinds of directions to keep that movement up. Why is yoga so great? You move on every axis, every plane of movement you're doing. So just to talk about the vertebrae really quickly before I put Sue away, you've got your cervical spine, which is your neck. Remember, this is a secondary curve. This curve didn't exist when we were born. There are 7 vertebrae here. The first 2 vertebrae of your neck are called atlas and axis. They're like the things that support the weight of the world. They're named after Greek mythology. And they don't have that supportive cushion. So they exist on top of one another. One is just a circle, and the other has like a little nubbin, and they have loads of movement. So cervical spine, if you move your neck, don't do like crazy movements, but you have the most range of movement in the cervical spine, heaps, okay? It's the atlas and axis that allow us to do this, okay? So they're the main components to the reason why the neck has so much space. So you've got 7 there, and then we've got 12 thoracic vertebrae. Now, most people don't complain that much about thoracic pain, but most people are very, very tight in the thoracic. How do we know that there are 12 thoracic vertebrae? Really easy, because they mirror the 12 sets of ribs that we have. Okay, so thoracic is the rib cage region, 12 vertebrae, 12 ribs. Okay, so 24 altogether. And then we've got our lumbar spine. So these are big bad boy bones, and there are 5 of them. Okay, 5 of these. So thoracic is that kyphosis. Okay, so rounding of the back. This is primary curve, and really easy to come into what's called flexion. So when we come forwards, but not so easy to come into what's called extension, back bending. And that's because the natural curve is doing this. Lumbar natural curve is what's called lordosis. Okay, so we can really easily go backwards, but we want to be doing the other direction. We want to be coming into flexion. And also, most people don't engage the core muscles here. So we want to be working on engaging these so that the lower back doesn't have to take all that weight and all that pressure. Then we have only 2 bones left. When we're born, we have 33 vertebrae. And as we age, we only end up with, I think it's 26. Just had to check my notes. So 26. And where we lose the vertebrae is this area. So the coccyx, when we're born, is made of 3 to 5. Everybody's slightly different. These fuse. Okay, coccyx becomes 1. And then sacral spine is made up of 5 vertebrae, and these also fuse. They fuse to help kind of stabilize the pelvis. And this is that primary curve again, that kyphosis, okay? There's not really much that you can do to open that area. I mean, these are just 2 bones, and you're not going to do too much. But what you want to be able to do is have that range of motion in the hips. Okay, so let's talk about the different movements in the spine. And the reason why I want you to know these, you don't need to remember the words, but the reason why I want you to know them is that when, let's say, you're doing a home yoga practice, or you've been working for a long time at your desk and you're like, I really want to open up my spine, it's really important to try to move in all of those ranges. So the first one, and we've done all of these already. So the first one is just folding forwards. Okay, so you can just let the head hang, or you can dangle all the way. So you're coming into what's called flexion of the spine. Okay, so rounding forwards is flexion. Come back up. Back bending. Okay, and back bending, it's not here. This is not a back bend. You want to take it in thoracic. So most people, it's quite limited. Okay, so, and then cervical spine might feel weird, but back bending is called extension. So you're opening up that spine. And then side to side is lateral. Okay, side to side. And then obviously you've got your twisting. Okay. And then you've got one more, and this is called axial extension. And it's very, very subtle movement. You probably won't even feel it that much, but if you just basically stand and just think about your head getting taller, that's axial extension. Axial extension is really, really important before we come into any spinal movement. If I'm hunched over and then I want to twist, I already know that if I'm hunched, the front line of my vertebrae are going to be kind of crunching together. If then I start to twist, those vertebrae don't really have the space. So I want to lengthen first, then I want to twist. Lengthen first, then I want to side bend. Lengthen first, then I want to forward fold. Lengthen first, then I want to back bend. Okay, so it's axial extension. And axial extension is always on the inhale. Okay, think about length creating space. That's on the inhale. Now, don't worry if you don't remember everything about the spine. Remember that it is the thing that stores your nervous system, okay, that spinal cord. It supports the weight of the head, supports the limbs, it aids with movement. It's also important to know that your spine is pretty tough. Like, this is the thing that holds up the whole body for your life. Lots of people get really nervous with the spine and the back. Generally, we don't injure the bones or the actual kind of architecture of the spine. Generally, it's the muscles around that are weak, that are tight. And because of this, when we do spinal movements, we kind of twinge them. Now, I know a few of you in the course do have spinal issues. So when you come into this week's lessons, just move slow, take your time and listen. And that's why I've saved this for week 8, because the spine for most people can cause a type of anxiety. You're at the point now where you know how to connect to your breath and you also know how to listen to your body. And that's why we're doing the spine now. So let's get into some of the movements. So I'm just going to change this so Sue isn't front and center. Cool. Okay, so let's just do some standing stuff. Okay, so come back into that Tadasana. So nice and engaged legs, pressing the toes down, pulling the ball of the foot towards the heel of the foot, hands by the sides, and then lengthen the head up. You're not sending the chin forwards. You're slightly tucking the chin as if somebody was pulling the back of your head. Good. And just find that axial extension. Nice. Inhale, take the hands high. Grab a hold of your left wrist. I'm just going to move this up so you can see what I'm doing with my hands. So grab a hold of your left wrist. And then slowly start to just pull your left wrist over to your right. Now, what I don't want you to do is crunch the side of the right waist. I want you to think up and over. Axial extension, over. Axial extension, over. This is a lateral opening. You're opening into those thoracic chamber, okay, into those intercostal ribs and into the side. Come back to center, grab the right wrist with the left hand, inhale, find length, and exhale over. Every time you inhale, think about length. Every time you exhale, a little further over. Good. Back to center, let the arms come down. Nice. From here, softly bend your knees, draw the navel in, and tuck the chin. Now, depending on how your spine feels, stop when it's too much, but you're going to, like a melting candle, start to roll down. Try to keep the navel drawing in. If you want to, you can walk your hands down your legs. Coming into what's called flexion. You're just going to slowly, like a melting candle, come all the way down. And when you're there, just hang out for a moment. Hands resting on the floor or holding opposite elbows. Now, for some people, this will feel quite intense. To come out of this, you're going to bend the knees, place the weight into the heels of the feet, draw the belly in. You may want to take your hands onto your knees to help support. Your lower back might not be able to take it. If you can take it, you roll like stacking Legos or Jengas. Slowly, 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 all the way up. That roll up and roll down is a really great exercise to start to build some strength and to build that mobility. Back bending. Okay. So standing back bending, I love. It's a really great way to open up. Hands onto the back. You can either take fingers facing down or up. This is quite intense on a lot of people. It requires a lot of wrist mobility and shoulder mobility. And then from here, what you're going to do first is squeeze the elbows towards each other. Okay. So you're opening up into the pecs and the biceps. Okay. This is all that thoracic chamber. It's going to be tight. Tuck your chin and I want you to look to your sternum. Okay. Lift the sternum. Lift this breastplate up, 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 up to the sky. Draw the navel slightly in. Try not to send the hips forwards. Okay. And then from here, you're in the back bend. If you want to, you can start to incorporate the throat. I would say instead of just slamming the head back, think about lifting the chin up to the sky. Hold that. Keep pulling the elbows towards each other. Keep lifting the breastplate. If it doesn't feel good with the throat open, tuck the chin. It can make some people feel nauseous. Nice. And then release. Shaking it out. If you have any pinching in the lower back, you just really need to make sure. Sometimes I even do back bends where I take one hand on the front, one hand on the back, and I just work on getting my thoracic to open. I am terrible at back bends. I don't practice them enough. I know that I need to. I like strength practice. So if you're naturally quite strong, you will also be naturally quite tight across the shoulders and the chest because those muscles pull everything forwards. Yoga is all about balance. We need to balance that out. So let's just do a little standing twist. Bring the hands up to the sky. Axial extension. And then just take your right hand forwards, left hand back. Good. What I want you to try to do is keep your hips quite square. So the front of your pelvis still facing forwards. Inhale, find length. And then exhale, just see if you can bring your left hand further back and maybe start to look towards the hand. Keep trying to keep the pelvis still and take 3 breaths here. Inhale, find length. Exhale, twist. Think about the muscles moving the vertebrae versus you just jamming the bones around. And really lengthen from fingertip to fingertip. This will be a nice stretch. On your next inhale, you're going to come back to center, arms above the head. And as you exhale, you're going to take left hand forwards, right hand back. Maybe looking slightly forwards to the side to start. And you might not be able to twist all the way. You might be somewhere here. Inhale, find length. Exhale, twist. Inhale, find length. Exhale, twist. Again, think about those tummy muscles doing the work. You've got all those muscles that wrap around the vertebrae. Get them to work. Nice. And then gently spin back to center. Bring the hands back up to the sky. Thumbs down, Anjali Mudra. Nice. Hands by the sides. Good. All righty. So those are our standing poses. I'm just going to move this down. All righty. So coming all the way down onto the all fours into tabletop. I'm going to whiz, because we've got quite a few to do tonight. I'm going to whiz through them, but all of these poses are in your posture tutorials. So you can look at all of these poses as well individually. So you can also do all of those movements from tabletop. So let's say one day you want to do them from standing, one day you want to do them from tabletop. So let's try all of those movements again. Something called cat-cow that you know very well. So start to let the belly drop, sit bones rise, chest forwards, back bend. This is extension of the spine. As you exhale, draw the belly in, round the back, flexion of the spine. Good, take it a couple more times. And notice when you come into back bends, the belly is soft. And when we come into flexion, generally the belly is engaging. Good, and then come back to cat-cow or come back to tabletop. And let's do axial extension. So send the tailbone back and grow through the crown of the head. Again, it's going to be very subtle movement. If anything, it's just an energetic movement. Okay, so axial extension. You're sort of imagining that you're growing a little bit taller. Let's go into some lateral movements. Take an inhale. As you exhale, bring right butt cheek and right shoulder towards each other, but keep the belly in the center of your mat. Inhale back to center. Exhale, take it to the other side. Good. Keep moving. Inhale to center. Exhale to take the movement into the lateral. Lateral movements are very limited. And you really want to work on keeping the belly still. You're just moving from the top and the bottom of the spine. Nice. Back to center. Alrighty. So twisting. Twisting's really nice to do from tabletop. Keep your left hand put. Send your right hand up to the sky. Look up to the hand if you can. As we exhale, we can thread and hover, bringing the ear and the shoulder nice and close to the floor. And then inhale, take that hand all the way back up to the sky. Good. Do 2 more like that. Thread, hover. Inhale, take it back up. 1 more. Thread, hover. Take it back up. And then bring that hand down. Good. This time, right hand stays put, left hand lifts high. Take the hand as high as you feel comfortable, and then thread and hover. Everybody can come down to a different level. Okay, if you feel really comfortable with twisting, then you can lower and get really, really close. If you don't feel as comfortable, then don't bring the ear and the shoulder so close to the floor. Okay, you can just take the arm through. Good. And then bring your hand back onto the mat. Okay, so all those different movements that we did standing, we've now done from tabletop. Okay, so we've done these poses before, but let's do them again with a little bit more knowledge. So cobra, baby cobra and full cobra. Hands on the floor, belly down, and you want your hands kind of underneath the shoulders. We're not going to use our hands. So we're going to do baby cobra first. Your hands, let's just pretend you have absolutely no power in the hands at all. You want to be pressing the tops of the feet down. Don't let them lift. You want to squeeze your butt cheeks and push your pubic bone into the mat. Now from here, you're going to squeeze the elbows into the side of the body, squeeze the backs of the scapula, the shoulder blades together, and slide them down. Take a big inhale. And as you exhale, press the feet, squeeze the butt, and start to lift the chest. Now lift the hands so that you can make sure that you're just using those back muscles, then place the hands back down. Good. Now from here, we're going to stay and breathe. I want you to feel into the muscles on the posterior chain. This is the back side of the body. Now this is tough, okay? You are coming into a back bend. You are coming into what's called extension, but you're using the muscles to pull the weight of the body off the floor. Feels like a lot of work, okay? Now, if you don't have a lot of movement in the spine, this is a great pose. You're generally not going to hurt yourself because you're not taking the bones into an uncomfortable place because the muscles are responsible. Now, to come from baby cobra, you can lower down and look at me, into full cobra. This is where we start to press into the hands and we start to come into a much deeper back bend. Now, what we don't want to do in this is lock out the elbows, okay? Lots of people have a habit of doing this. You never want to lock out your elbows. You want to be always able to use the muscles. Another thing that happens is people's shoulders creep up to their ears. You will need to be able to glide those shoulders down. And another thing that happens is people start to jam into the lower back. So I want you to lower down. When you do a back bend, make sure that we're not taking the lumbar spine into too severe of extension. You want the sensation of the back bend to be equal between all vertebrae. So you want to be listening for like a hinge, okay? A hinge or a pinch is too much in one area. It means that nowhere else in the spine is really taking it except for that hinge point. So press the feet down, press the pubic bone down, hug the elbows in, glide the shoulders away from the ears, take a big inhale, and as you exhale, just start to lift. Now you can press into those hands. Notice if you get that hinge point, if you do lower a little bit down, hi Hudson. And if you need to stay in baby cobra, that's fine. There's absolutely no shame in doing this. And actually, it's a really great way to strengthen the back. Good, and then lower down. Nice. From here, you're gonna push into those hands. Just take a little child's pose. So you're stretching out the spine. Good. Okay, so we're now going to do a different version of a back bend, and this is camel pose. Camel pose, I always take a really long time to get into the pose when I'm teaching a class. And this is because people race into the pose, and this is because people dump into their lower back. Remember, anytime that you're doing a back bend, anytime you're coming into a back bend or extension, it is not ego, okay? I don't care how far back you go. I really don't. It is sensation over destination. And the sensation should really be from the lowest rib, okay, up. Remember, thoracic, that's the area we want to work. There are 12 thoracic vertebrae. There are 12 ribs. Anywhere along that rib cage, okay, that region, if you're feeling it, perfect. Anything below the ribs, okay, you're going too much into the lumbar spine, and we don't want that. So camel, you're going to be on your knees. If you need to pad up your mat, just double it up so you've got a little bit more cushion. And we're going to tuck our toes. Okay, now just look at me first. People think camel is this. Oh, okay, I'm going to grab onto my heels. Yep, I'm in camel. I'm not doing a back bend. All I'm doing is taking pressure into my knees. To do the back bend, you need to be able to keep your hips directly above the knees. So that is rule one. Sometimes when I'm adjusting, I will stand with my hands on people's hips and I will say, okay, come into camel, but you cannot separate your hips from my hands. And then they really feel the truth of the pose. So just like we did with that standing back bend, it's the exact same, but the knees are on the ground. Hands onto your lumbar spine, fingertips facing down or up, whatever works for you. And then remember, we want to open up from the rib cage up. So let's start with the elbows. Pull the elbows towards each other, opening again into the pecs and the biceps. Look to your sternum, your breastbone, and lift. Okay, you might have like triple, quadruple chins right now. Doesn't matter. Good. And just feel that. Okay, just feel that. Keep squeezing those shoulders together. Then if you want to from here, you can start to lift the chin if you want to. Okay, if you get dizzy, if you have lower high blood pressure, it just might be a bit too crazy, a bit too wild. So keep the chin tucked. Good. Going to breathe for 5. Keep squeezing. Keep lifting sternum. So sternum is lifting while you squeeze those elbows together. Nice. And then just release. You can take the hands on the floor. You can sit on the heels for a minute. I know some people are really uncomfortable in this position. Just watching me. So the second stage of camel is to drop back and grab the heels. Remember what I said about those knees, okay? So camel, if you can drop back and grab the heels, but keep the hips where they are, then you're starting to take that back bend in thoracic. If you grab the heels and your hips have to travel back, you're going to feel it in your knees. There's so much pressure going into those knees and you're not taking a back bend. Now, some of you, this just isn't going to be possible. I know your bodies don't even care about this. Like, forget about it. Don't go for the heels. If you are very flexible, okay, Rainy, for instance, you may even drop the toes and go back. But remember, those who are hypermobile, I don't want this dumping in the lower back. You need to be able to open into that thoracic. Better to stay safe and keep the toes tucked or keep the hands on the back. So let's just do one more round. If you do want to play around grabbing the heels, then go for it. But remember, hips stay forwards. And also listen, okay? If you're like, can't breathe, or if you're getting that hinge sensation, don't do it. Hands on the lower back. Think about drawing the navel in. Squeeze those elbows together. Lift the sternum. Look down to the sternum. Lift. Okay? Triple chin. Then if it feels good, you can let the chin lift. But really, you're drawing those elbows back. Good. And then just release. Shake it out. And we're going to come on to our backs. So we have bridge pose, plow pose, and fish pose, okay? Fish pose is called Matsyasana. Some of these aren't going to be possible for you. Plow, for some of us, is just not going to be possible. So you're going to watch me and you can play around with it. But if it doesn't feel good, don't do it. I'm just going to demo it and make sure you understand it in case you go into a class where the teacher teaches this and you know what's coming, so you know if it's good or not. Okay, bridge pose. Love bridge. Okay, just like camel pose. we're using the muscles to take us into a back bend, and it's going to feel like a lot of work. What muscles are we working? We're working glute max, so the big booty muscle. We're working hamstrings. So instead of stretching the hamstrings, we're going to strengthen them. So these are the backs of your thighs. So the feet placement in bridge is about hip distance. Okay, you can't see your feet, but remember that hips distance, if you take your fists above your face, you take your two fists together, the outer edge of the pinky or the outer edge of the hand, that's about hip distance. But try to get your feet underneath your knees. Another thing that you can check is if you can brush the backs of your ankles with your fingers. But I would rather you feel like stacked, like everything's comfortable and like nice and strong. You don't want the feet too wide, and you definitely don't want the feet too far forwards. You want them nice and close. Okay, from here, hands come onto the floor, okay, palms face down. Now, if you remember, when we want to use the core, we push the lumbar spine down and the belly engages. You're going to start to feel your tailbone or your coccyx start to lift off the floor, sacral spine. Release that, okay, let the belly come up, let the lower back lift, and you'll feel that tailbone press down. Draw the belly in, push the lower back. You're going to feel the tailbone lift. This action where you engage the core is step one of bridge. So release, tailbone presses down. Take a big inhale. Exhale, push the belly down, push the lower back down, feel the tailbone lift. Now from here, drive the heels into the floor and just start to lift. Okay? Doesn't matter how high you go. For many people, this is tough. Okay, most people have really weak glutes and not that strong of hamstrings. Okay, this is a great way to strengthen the booty. So press the heels down, take a big inhale, and as you exhale, see if you can lift a little higher. You want to squeeze your bum and push the heels down. Take a big inhale, exhale, lift a little higher. What you want to imagine is that your chest is coming towards your chin. Okay, so you're taking that back bend in thoracic. Good. Now, as we lower, I want you to push your butt towards your heels. This is going to give you that axial extension. And you're going to push the lower back down, tailbones lifted, vertebrae by vertebrae by vertebrae, until you let that lower back lift. So it is less about how high you come, and it is more about the control and the sensation of that control. You are lifting the spine and lowering the spine with the muscles that support it. So let's try that again. Take a big inhale. As you exhale, press the lower back down and your tailbone will lift. Once the tailbone lifts, drive the heels, start to lift the butt, squeeze the butt. Come to a height that feels somewhat comfortable. Big inhale. As you exhale, squeeze those muscles. They're not used to working. You need to recruit them. You need to say, wake up. I need you to work. My butt is heavy. Come on. Keep pressing into those heels. Keep squeezing the bum. Imagine you got a 100-pound note, $100 bill between those butt cheeks. You don't want to drop it. Good. Okay. As we lower, start with the upper back. You're sending the hips towards the heels. This is going to lengthen the spine. Give your vertebrae space. Start to bring the belly in, push the lower back down, and eventually that tailbone will drop. Good. Once you've lowered, really nice way to release the lower back. You might be feeling it. Feet wide, knock the knees together. And that's all you need to do. If you want a little bit more, you can windshield wipe those knees. Good. Okay, so plow pose, it is in your tutorials. I'm just going to show it quickly. I know from the people that I've got in the live right now, I don't think that anyone in the live will want to do this. If you do, by all means, go for it. So plow pose is an extreme flexion. Okay, so I'm going to bring my feet all the way over my head. A lot of people with tight hamstrings won't get to, the toes on the floor. So step one of plow is lifting the butt and then starting to lift the head over. Now, what I want to eventually do is get my butt over my shoulders. A lot of people start here and they can hold on to their hips and their feet are off the floor. The further that you can get your butt over your head, the easier it is to get the toes down. I think I'm actually coming onto a block, which is just fancily there and ready for me. You can also use blocks. And then you need to have the muscle control to slowly lower back down, okay? A nice way to release the lumbar spine as well is to just take the knees in. So if plow is something that you want to work towards, first step is having the strength to lift the butt and to lower back down. Okay, so that could be something that you work on. Now, fish pose is the counter to plow. So lots of yoga, we do one type of spine movement, and then we go into the opposing to just balance it out. So plow is flexion, okay? I'm like totally rounding my spine. And plow, for many people, they find it hard to breathe because, especially if you've got boobs and a belly and everything, it's all like squidging up. So that's why plow can be challenging as well. Fish, on the other hand, is a really lovely pose, and you can use blocks or your body to do this. So legs are straight, and then what you're going to do is you're going to bring your elbows onto the floor. Am I doing this right? I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I've done fish. Yeah, what am I doing? This is fish. Okay, so elbows come down onto the floor and you let the head drop back. I don't know why I just made that so complicated. So elbows down pretty much underneath the shoulders, head drops back. So if this causes any kind of discomfort in the shoulders, a nice way to do Matsyasana fish pose is with a block. And sometimes I start my classes in this. I would recommend coming into this kind of a pose as often as you can. So you're going to take your block, and for some people, it's going to be kind of uncomfortable. Mid-setting, going along the vertical of the spine. Then you want to, and this can be a little bit fidgety, you want to get that block pretty much in line, the top of the block with where the thoracic and cervical spine meet. So at the kind of butt of the shoulders and the neck. And then you just let the head drop back. Feet can be on the floor or straight. And then this opens up the chest. So the shoulders drop back. If you've got a really hard cork block, it can sometimes be a bit intense. I'm on quite a soft, squidgy one. It needs to be sort of this kind of size block. If you've got one of those really flat rectangle ones, it'll just fold underneath you. But you can also use a bolster. I know some of you have a bolster. Again, you just take that bolster and you just lay across like so. Really easy way to open up and create space. Okay? Just let yourself kind of drop. I think you could probably do this with a big old exercise ball, or if you had a bunch of pillows as well. That'll open up the spine. So those are the main kind of spinal openers in yoga. There are so many more, but they're quite advanced. And I think those movements and those postures, they make up the crux of the movements that we do in yoga for the spine. How is that? Overwhelming? Okay. Did I kill you? Pete's just hanging out in Matsyasana, loving it. You're on mute still.